Okay, good evening. My name's Kevin May. I'm the editor and co-founder of Tnooz.com. Welcome to this, the latest Tnews webinar, produced this time in association with Travelport. Thank you very much to Travelport for supporting this. With the lofty title of The Evolution of Search, and we've cunningly put a big R in there in brackets, so the revolution of search. I suspect you will all be knowing what we're talking about. So it's good evening for me. I'm in the UK. It's good morning from one of our panelists, Shelley Beasley, who is in Auckland in New Zealand, and it's good evening from Mike Wake, who's at Travelport's offices in Langley in the UK as well. Also joining us later on is my glamorous producer, Gene Quinn, who is in Connecticut on the east coast of the US, so he'll be joining us later on for the Q&A. So what we wanted to tackle over the next 60 minutes or so, there's increased consolidation in the travel industry. We have the rise of Metasearch and, as we all know, increasingly tech-savvy consumers, which means that search has really never played a more important role within the travel industry across many different aspects of it. What we're hoping to do is examine the evolution of search and the landscape in which it sits, and how those changes, which have been driven by consumer behavior, what their expectations are, and their attitudes combined with advances in technology, how this is impacting on search, the challenges that it's created, and most importantly, I guess, the opportunities for all of you listening here. So what we've got is a great panel this afternoon, this evening, the morning, wherever you are, as I'm going to keep on saying, because we are all over the place today. Michael Wake, as I said, he is the product director at Travelport, and obviously, as you can see on your screen there, Shelley Beasley, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Webjet. So they're going to be talking us through two presentations. They'll go back to back, and they will run up to about 15 minutes before the end. And then, as always, we have an opportunity for Q&A, which means that not only will Gene and I be throwing questions at Michael and Shelley, but also this is a great opportunity for you guys that have taken the time to listen in to send in your questions. Now, you can do this very easily on the dashboard on your right-hand side. You can see a little button there that says questions, and all you do is type your question and it will come straight through to me. When we get to the Q&A at the end, I will then group some of the like-minded questions together, and then we'll throw them at the panel. So please, at any point throughout the actual presentations, please send your questions in, and we'll keep reminding you as we go through. Another thing is that we are recording the entire webinar, so if you have to dip out at some point, don't worry. We hope to have all the slides and a recording, including the Q&A that takes place at the end. We'll have that up on tnews.com. We usually try and aim for within the next 24 hours. So look out for that. You will get a reminder at some point. It's probably tomorrow morning or later on to say that thanks ever so much, and there'll be a video to see. What we also do is we intersperse the webinar with polls, just so that we can kind of get a sense of what the audience is thinking, where you are with your strategy in your companies, that kind of thing. So what we're going to do now, we have 4 polls, but we're going to do a little practice one here. Like I said, my glamorous assistant in the Connecticut, Gene Quinn, is going to run these. So the first poll, just so you can familiarise yourself, is as follows. Where are you located? Are you in Asia Pacific? Are you in Europe, Middle East and Africa, North America, or Central and South America? So if you would please like to select one of those. And that's it. Most of you have now voted. Okay, so not a particularly big surprise given the times here. So almost 4 out of 5 of you are in North America. 5% of you are in Asia Pacific. That's maybe all of Shelley's fans and family that are listening in. 14% in Europe and 2% Central and South America. So that's how the polls work. So if you'd like to shut that one down, Gene, that's great. And now we'll go straight into the second poll, which is a kind of a scene setter for what we're going to be talking about over the next 55 minutes or so. So, Gene, if you'd like to fire up this one. So, what represents best-in-class search, question mark? Is it the first one, speed? Is it diversity? Is it volume, as in the largest number of results? Is it accuracy, consistent data, fewest booking failures? Or is it the content, low-cost carriers, ancillary services, hotels, etc.? So, if you would all like to select one of those. And I can see those coming in now, some very interesting results already. Okay, just a few more moments. I think, Jean, we can show the results of that one now. So, with a majority, just 51% is accuracy, which I guess for everybody is important, especially for users. So, just over a quarter have said content. Next, 11% diversity. Just 7% of you have said speed of results, which is quite interesting in the context of what everyone's good friends at Google have been talking about, which is that speed is the most important thing. So interesting there. And just 2% of you have said volume, as in the largest number of results. So some interesting results there. I don't know when we get through to the presentations if Mike and Shelley want to comment on those, but quite interesting. So I think without further ado, if we can just move the slides on, and I think we'll go straight in. So pleasure to introduce Michael Wake. As I said, he's the product director at Travelport. He's based in Langley, just west of London, where I believe he is sitting right now. So I hope the offices are nice and warm for you still, Michael, but welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kevin. Good evening. Very pleased to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you all on the line, and thank you very much again in advance for taking the time to listen to us today. My name, as Kevin has mentioned, is Michael Wake. I'm the product director responsible for search and pricing here at Travelport, and I'm based here in our offices just west of London. During the session, we're going to explore why search is so important, who uses search, and what are they looking for. We'll dive into some data related to where travelers are performing their searches. We'll look at how mobile devices are influencing behavior. We'll pause to review a little bit some of the progress that we've seen through 2011, what existing and new players have brought to the table, and what that might mean for the future. And then finally, we'll look into what wider industry conditions and evolving demands mean for all of us that are playing our part in travel retailing, including a perspective from an actual travel retailer in the form of Shelley, who'll take over once my section is finished. So with that, on to the first slide, please. So who searches? Well, in short, almost everyone, even those who might not think do. The vast majority that hand over their cash in return are likely to have been served up that option by a search product. Business travelers, the high yielders of the travel industry, search when they log in to online booking tools. The information returned to them, often with their preference for non-stop flights or at the very least quick journey times, have been selected for them by a search platform. The needs of luxury leisure travelers, those looking for high-end, tailor-made vacations, often similar are in nature to business travelers, because after all, a couple that is spending $5,000 on a secluded beach resort aren't usually too focused on saving themselves $30 on flights by taking a connection. In contrast, leisure travelers are often considered the default category for search. They could be adventure travelers seeking their next thrill. It could be families looking for time at the beach, or couples looking for a few days of relaxation. They're often more price sensitive than business travelers. The needs of the leisure traveler commonly revolve around balancing price with convenience. After all, racing from a gate at one end of an airport to catch a flight leaving in 10 minutes' time from a gate at the other end of that airport is definitely not a fun game to play if you've got two small children in tow, unless, of course, it saves you a whole bundle of cash. Sometimes the most price-sensitive of all groups are student and young travelers. They consider themselves independent travelers, and this subset of travelers are super price-conscious, and they demand the greatest value for their money. Low-cost carriers, itineraries with multiple connections, sometimes long layovers, buses and trains are all on the table for these guys, as long as they can get from A to B with the least possible cost. Elderly travelers are using search products as savvy retirees plan and book travel online. They're richer, they're fitter, and they're keen to be going somewhere. It's a lucrative niche that should most definitely not be overlooked. So we have a range of traveler personas, all of them searching online and offline, and each of them have specific ideas about what they're looking to purchase. Despite their obvious differences, they all have something in common. Nobody wants to pay more than they have to for their trip. After all their needs are taken into account, everyone wants to pay the best price for what suits them most closely. Next slide. So where are travelers searching? Well, a 2011 study conducted by the Atmosphere Research Group examines the behavior of US-based leisure travelers and questioned them on how they search online for flights. The result of that study clearly shows that travelers research their trips using a wide array of channels. The study indicates actually that a typical booker will use up to 9 of the 30 categories that they were actually surveyed about when they were searching a trip. From the group that were surveyed, 74% of respondents indicated they use internet search engines when investigating travel. That's a huge proportion of potential buyers using search platforms like Google, like Yahoo, that traditionally haven't directly offered travel for purchase, yet they're still so highly prominent in the consumer buying journey. 71% of respondents indicated they hit supplier websites when they're looking for flights. And that's up from 62% who said they shop specific retail online travel agencies. Most interestingly, considering this is a survey on passengers or travelers that indicate they search online, 38% of the respondents indicated they would still consider phoning a supplier on a toll-free number to obtain information. And yet, just 15% of respondents indicated they would visit a travel agency to receive face-to-face service. Heading down to a physical travel agency to talk to somebody about a trip fell way outside of the top 10 traveler search channels. Review sites are creeping up in popularity. 44% of this survey indicated they'd use destination guide websites, and 42% had looked through traveler review sites. That's allowing, effectively, the opinions of others to influence buying decisions. In a similar vein, 56% indicated that suggestions from friends and family were a factor in their search for travel information. And I know from my own buying habits that review sites like TripAdvisor can deliver unique views on destinations, on hotels, or on vacation experiences. And I can often be persuaded or even dissuaded from purchasing a particular product or service if the views of travelers that identify themselves in the same way that I do infer the offering was not to their liking. What is clear, though, from studies like this is that airlines, online, and traditional travel agencies face increasingly wide-ranging competition. Frugal customers are more than happy to engage more than one source to ensure they are getting the best deal. Next slide. The mobile revolution is most definitely altering the way that leisure and business travelers shop for and book travel. US mobile empowers travelers use their mobile phones for a wide variety of flight-related activity. 44% of leisure travelers and 48% of business travelers surveyed in a 2011 Focusrite study into traveler technology indicated they use their mobile phones to research flights. Making reservations via mobile devices is becoming increasingly popular amongst the business traveler community. 26% of this survey's respondents indicated they had confirmed travel reservations on a mobile device, and 20% had used such applications to change existing reservations while on the move. Notice here that business travelers, and they're often the most highly sought after across the industry as a result of their higher average yields, are actually the earliest adopters of mobile technology. As flight search develops, major players are going to be forced to place increased emphasis on mobile search. Otherwise, they'll be unable to retain the most lucrative sector. Experts in the m-commerce space, mobile commerce, agree that the user experience required for a successful transaction on a mobile device looks and feels very different to that delivered in other forms of online retail. And that's traditionally via computers or laptops. And of course, those machines have wider screens and keyboards. The sophistication of mobile devices has evolved with such a pace that a lot of those devices are actually as capable, as powerful as full-size computers. Yet the smaller screen size and concerns over device security have traditionally been barriers to adoption to mobile technology so far. However, despite how you might think of mobile device is here to stay, and it's expected. Next slide. So 2011 saw a number of new entrants in travel. As an industry, we were joined by Google, the world's largest marketing agency. Google's a force to be reckoned with for any industry. In 2011, they leveraged assets acquired through ITA software to release a flight search product. It was launched for US domestic city fares in the first instance, and it's been recently extended to feature flights from US destinations to international points. And Google does offer wonderfully high-speed responses, and they're often derived from pre-computed data. From Google's results, consumers can be referred directly to the airline supplier or to an exclusive group of OTAs to complete their purchase. And in volume, that's a powerful position to be in. Right now, Google Flights is a standalone offering, but it shan't be long before Google is able to serve up travel prices for generic internet search. Perhaps an indication into the adequacy of flight search can be obtained from looking at a new entrant called Hipmunk. Essentially a travel meta-search company, Hipmunk obtains travel data from established providers, but presents that data in a new and a highly visual way, according to their proprietary Agony Index. When travelers select Hipmunk's Agony sort, they won't see flights with 6-hour layovers, 15 minutes between flight connections, or 2 or 3 stop itineraries when a reasonable non-stop option is available. Hipmunk deprioritizes what it deems to be unattractive options in a bid to provide the traveler with a more pleasant and satisfying online experience. Social media is also looking for its slice of the action in travel. Facebook has retail functionality available on its website. For example, the Delta ticket counter on Facebook allows passengers to search and book flights, check in for flights, and monitor real-time flight information, all via the social media portal. Flash sale sites, websites like Groupon, are also in on travel retail. They're attracting attention from leisure travelers looking for flight bargains, and they've been working with the likes of JetBlue, Southwest Airlines, Air France, and Alitalia to offer time-sensitive flight deals. Industry consolidation has had and will continue to have a profound effect on the art of selling travel. Mergers between airlines, Delta Northwest, United, Continental, British Airways, and Iberia here in Europe, all alter the dynamics of distribution. Airline mergers may reduce availability as flight networks are resized to cut costs. Reduced seat capacity has the obvious potential to raise fares, and higher fares make it harder to satisfy price-sensitive customers. In a bid to contain costs, airlines are tightening the reins on distribution expenses. They're more closely monitoring look-to-book ratios, and in some cases, terminating relationships with what they perceive to be low-value travel agencies. All of these factors add to the pressures on margin, conversion, and ultimately, the success of those companies making a living from selling air travel. Next slide. Those cost and margin pressures are both helped and hindered by the continued rise of Metasearch. OTAs view Metasearch as a valuable marketing channel in a space where consumer loyalty is fragile and competition basically boils down to price. However, for those supporting those sales, the airlines, the GDSs, and travel agencies alike, the rise in Metasearch traffic heightens concerns on search volume and the associated processing cost of that increased volume. In the case of TravelSupermarket.com, they're a player here in the United Kingdom. Their website proudly announces that they're able to return flight prices from 35 travel providers. Now, I ran a query this morning on that website from London to New York for a 7-day trip in September. And the website returned to me a page of 68 options from a total of 14 suppliers. And there was a mix of travel agency and airline websites returning results. 6 of those 14 suppliers are travel agency customers of Travelport here in the UK. So as a system provider, it is quite conceivable that in response to my click, my product searched for the same thing 6 times from 6 of my travel agency customers. In an era of cost containment, does product comparison in its current form deliver enough value? Are the conversion rates of Metasearch referrals high enough to warrant their processing demand in the short, mid, and long term? It's a question that only time will tell. Next slide. In a very simplistic graphic, here is a representation of a consumer's buying journey. A traveler recognizes the need to travel. They then typically search for information to satisfy the need. They may take an extra step to further evaluate alternatives. And that's often where Metasearch companies provide an appreciated service. They provide an easy way to evaluate those alternatives. Once a consumer or a traveler is assured they are getting a good deal, the consumer completes the transaction and anticipates the upcoming trip. At the same time, there is a distribution and a selling cycle taking place on the airline side. The airlines are making pricing decisions about their product. Those decisions are being reflected in their fares and their inventory, and they're pushed out across the distribution channels. At Travelport, we serve that information up to travel agencies as e-pricing search responses. The point at which a consumer arrives on a travel website and searches for travel content is the point at which these two cycles interact. It is the one and only opportunity that a retailer has to match the right product to the right customer at the right price. If that careful balance is struck, your shopper is converted to a booker. Delivery of the lowest and most accurate content, delivered quickly and with an adequate range of choice, are incredibly important. Accuracy is so important to us at Travelport that we have a dedicated team of full-time employees whose sole reason for being here is to focus on the accuracy of our search results and to minimize failures throughout the buying journey. Next slide. The historically held view that shoppers visit websites with a clear idea of what they're searching for before they arrive there is just simply no longer valid. A large proportion of leisure travelers seek inspiration. A 2010 study by Total Media claimed that 43% of travelers in the UK are inspired by results from search engines. As a leisure traveler, I can understand how that would work. When I don't have a fixed destination in mind, I'll often use search engines to research vacation spots. What is the weather going to be like in June in Singapore? Or when is the best time to go whitewater rafting in Costa Rica? Once I've figured out from this information where I might want to go, I'll then go and have a website to find out how much it'll cost, see if I can afford it. That same also suggests that OTAs are being used for more than just booking. They're seen as a place to research, a place to get ideas, and a place to become inspired. It's not just OTAs playing in the space. Airlines themselves on their own websites are experimenting with inspiration. They're allowing consumers to enter more open-ended search requests that they can then pair up with relevant deals to seduce the undecided. Next slide. So-called fuzzy search, as it's increasingly being known, can be an effective way to target and inspire travelers to book. It's an emerging form of search which is attractive to those researching leisure trips predominantly. These travelers will typically know they want to go on vacation. They have a budget in mind, and they may be able to be persuaded about a city or a country. At Travelport, we're working on new ways to deliver accurate, real-time searches to support this type of fuzzy request. We have customers in over 110 countries. Sole reliance on pre-computed data or on cached lookup from a relatively static database is not going to be sufficient in meeting needs of customers in all those countries. We're looking to empower travel agencies to control their own destiny as it relates particularly to the quality of fuzzy search by offering real-time live process solutions. On screen is a capture of a proof of concept that we have for live processing that we're working on that relaxes the geographical boundaries of a search request. Instead of searching, as you would typically do, from Sydney to Delhi, this search is actually a request from Sydney to India. In response to that question, the e-pricing platform has identified which cities in India have competitive fare options and has computed in real time a series of flights with prices to a range of those compelling destinations in the country of India. The example shown is a reasonably priced option to Indore in India. It routes via Singapore and Delhi for a fare of $1,410. Alternative inputs could direct a search across the entire region. For example, from Sydney to Asia. It would give a very curious traveler an accurate price insight into the cost of travel across the whole of Asia in a single click. But think of how many consumers you could attract far earlier in their decision-making process if you were able to offer live, relevant, multi-destination search. Next slide. Multiple date searches are also becoming increasingly appealing to both corporate and leisure travelers as they plan vacations or meetings around dates when fares are lowest. For leisure travelers planning vacations, travel dates are often one of the most flexible requirements. Flexible date searches are offered today by Travelport, and they support the ability to search across a week of outbound and return dates to balance price with schedule. For the leisure traveler, we offer the ability to search across weekends, allowing for the planning of weekend getaways when the lowest prices are available across a whole month. Moving forward, broader date ranges are going to be key to satiating demand for extensive search. The opportunity to accurately compare prices over multiple months or for a variety of trip durations is what is going to excite price-sensitive travelers that suffer from good deal phobia. They're likely to be more convinced to buy if they're confident they're getting the best deal. Fuzzy searches, whether they expand geographical or date parameters, must be fast, they must be accurate, and they must have their results presented in a simple manner to stand any chance of satisfying the traveler of the future. Next slide. Failure to deliver travel content that is easily understood by consumers is already emerging as a hindrance to search. Too much information, or TMI as it's known amongst the kids, is a credible threat to retailers. A Focusrite study of travelers from earlier this year examined points of irritation when searching for travel. And 51% of travelers in Russia felt frustrated by TMI, as did 33% in India, 30% in Brazil, and 22% of travelers here in the UK also raised this as an area for improvement. This supports the theory we hold here at Travelport, that returning content that is relevant to the needs of the traveler is a primary driver of conversion. If you cast a look at retailers outside of the travel industry, companies like Amazon have matured content relevance much faster than we have in travel. Retailers deliver personalized offers for products based on consumer profiles, perhaps by taking into account your purchase history, or from linking your viewing of one product to that of an alternative that other people may have bought. The most successful retailers undoubtedly have managed to simplify the buying experience without overwhelming the consumer with options. A great example of this is shown in the 2010 article from the New York Times. This article indicates that Sam's Club, a US-based wholesaler, have introduced e-values, and their specific deals targeted through analysis of a customer's buying history. The article indicated that the conversion rate for e-values within the 20 to 30% range. Now, we don't have publicly available data that exposes conversion rates of OTAs in the travel industry, but even the best and most efficient OTAs are very unlikely to be converting in the 20 to 30% range. Influencing the behavior of search to return content that is relevant to the traveler is key to our search plans here at Travelport. Later this year, we'll be bringing to market our e-pricing search control console. Now, effectively, we'll be handing over a far greater level of control over search to our system users. So moving forward, can you afford to be using a search platform that you can't control? Next slide. So we've explored the importance of search. We've explored the expansion and relevance of search results, but what about the end-to-end experience? A simple search that returns wide and relevant content can assure a customer they're buying into the best deal, and that's the utopia of travel retailing. But what represents a simple search experience? Mobile applications, the launch of Siri on the iPhone, providers like Nuance, Microsoft, and even Google that are offering accurate voice recognition software are effectively opening up doors into the world of voice-controlled search. What could be more simple than telling your needs to a mobile device using the exact same language that you would use to describe that trip to your friends? Searching online using plain language, often known as semantic search, is now standard for most types of online search. But why not travel? If Google can include reliable travel prices in search responses, customers, consumers, travelers may quickly get used to receiving content provided by OTAs today as a result of typing a few words into a search bar. Compare that experience to completing drop-down menus, selecting dates from calendars, and filling out a maze of checkboxes that is so common on travel sites today. I'm pretty sure I know what. To support this Travelport, we've partnered with Everture. They're a software company that have developed an advanced semantics engine. That engine deciphers text inputs and converts them into travel requests. You might have seen the marriage of their technology and of ours during a presentation at last year's Focusrite Travel Summit. At that event, Everture won the demo award for the most game-changing travel innovation. Later this year, we plan on integrating this capability into our GDS terminals to simplify travel agency search requests, and also to offer this in our API so that travel websites can keep pace with the rapidly evolving demands of search. So, in summary, the evolution of search does continue at breakneck speed. Consumers are more demanding than ever. It requires airlines, online travel agencies, and traditional travel agencies to partner with an air search provider that is dependable, accurate, relevant, and inspiring. At a time where so many retailers are vying for such fragile loyalty of travelers, is your search provider delivering the cutting-edge features that you need to remain competitive and improve future conversion? With that in mind, I'm just going to hand you back to the Tnooz team for some polling questions.
Okay, that's just brilliant stuff there, Michael. Thank you very, very much. I learned a couple of things there, not least what TMI means finally, so thanks ever so much for that. Just one point that is for everybody. We'll dig out that URL for the Sam's Club story that Michael mentioned, and we'll make sure that we put that on the story when we post that in the next 24 hours. So another poll, please, Jean, if you'd like to throw this one up. And we're asking you now, I believe voice search will never catch on. Might be a nice gimmick, bit of fun. It could be relevant in a few years' time. I would take it right now. So, what do we all think? Those results are starting to come in. It's early indications are that we don't have a particularly Luddite audience, which is good. Okay. So the results there. I believe voice search, just 3% of you believe it will never catch on. That's encouraging for all the technologists around. But the winner here, two, both on 43%, could be relevant in a few years' time. But the same number have also said, I would take it right now. So a nice little punch up between the two camps there. Just 11% of you said it might be a nice gimmick or a bit of fun. So reasonably split, but certainly forward-looking. So if you'd like to close that one down, Jean, and just the final poll from us now, just so we can get a kind of lead you into Shelley's presentation here. So, what is your strategic priority for acquiring new travel customers through search? Is it, number one, natural search and SEO, 2, paid search, C, B2B partnerships, the fourth option there, mobile search, and last of all, social media and commerce, by which we mean social commerce. Very interesting results coming in here. We'll keep this one open for a few minutes longer, I think, Jean, for a second here. I don't know if, Shelley, when we introduce you, if you want to remark on any of these when we throw up the results, but quite interesting. Okay, Jean, let's have those results up there then. Strategic priorities. So just over a third. This doesn't surprise me. Natural search and SEO, the two disciplines, are still incredibly prevalent. But 3 out of 10 of you, nearly, have said social media, strategic priority for acquiring new customers through search. 18% said B2B partnerships, 10% paid search, and 9% mobile search. So thank you very much for all taking part in those polls. That was the final poll there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Shelley Beasley. As I said before, she's the Chief Operating Officer of Webjet. She's based in, she's certainly based in New Zealand this morning for her. It's quite early for her in the morning there. It's late for me here, but welcome, Shelley. The floor is yours. Were you surprised in particular about that last poll result, just out of interest?
Yeah, I think I was most surprised about the mobile number being so low. And maybe that has to do with the audience and their view on their position with mobile today. But I would have expected mobile to be a bit higher. Certainly not at all surprised about organic, but I would have expected that to be a bit higher as well, maybe. And not at all surprised about paid being low. I mean, at Webjet, we have very little paid, and most of our search actually comes from organic. So we're looking to explore a bit more on the mobile side. So I'll touch a little bit about that in the presentation now. So.
Okay, over to you, Shelley.
Thanks,
looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you very much. So as you mentioned, my name is Shelley Beasley, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Webjet. In case you don't know who we are, I thought I'd take a quick minute to tell you a little bit about us, given that the majority of you on the call are from North America. So next slide, please. Webjet is Australia and New Zealand's largest online travel agency. We have been working with Travelport since 2003. We currently operate in Australia and New Zealand, North America as well, with both a Canadian and a U.S. site, which have been opened for about a year and a half for the U.S. site. Canada was last year. We launched Singapore and Hong Kong last year, and we are about to launch Mexico. Next slide, please. And just so you think I'm not making up those numbers, because it's really easy to do behind a phone and a PowerPoint, I've thrown up a Hitwise leaderboard to show our market leadership. So we're the big blue line up at the top there, and the three lines you see below are our three closest competitors, global OTAs of Flight Center, lastminute.com, and Expedia, although the order is Expedia, Flight Center, and lastminute.com in that order. So next slide, please. I'm going to tell you a few interesting facts about Webjet, and I tell you those to build a case about why search is so important to us. And the first interesting fact that I'd like to highlight is that Webjet charges fees for its air booking services. And with a primarily North American audience here, you might find that as a surprise. And not only do we charge fees, we actually have the highest fees in market, with a large number of very high visibility competitors promoting a no-fee structure. We're able to continue to charge these fees because our customers value both our excellent service and the quality content that we're able to serve them because of the strong search and e-pricing results that we are delivered. E-pricing, I remind you, as Mike mentioned, is the Travelport search product. Now, the second interesting Webjet is that unlike most of these, we sell a highly disproportionate amount of air. I'd probably not be too far off the mark if I said we sold one hotel a year, or at least we did until about 6 months ago when we launched a new hotel product, which I'll touch on later. But because we sell so much air product, getting search right and making sure that we do that exquisitely is an absolute priority for us. So I'd also like to add that when you want to buy the air from us online, you can't call a consultant to do that. So the ability for us to surface the results that our customers want to see, it is absolutely vital that we get it right the first time. There's no second chances for us. The third thing I'd like to highlight is that in a market like Australia, where total growth may be somewhere between, let's say, 6 and 8% when you're looking at the numbers, depending on what you want to use to judge total market growth. We're seeing our total transaction volume, or our total revenues, grow at 29%. That's when we announced our half-year earnings. Our financial year goes from July to June, and we had a total profit increase of 21%. These growth numbers were achieved even with some of the activities I'm going to be talking about in a minute that we're undertaking that have some significant cost to us. Again, that's all driven by our underlying air business. Again, that's why search is so important to us. And lastly, we have the #1 travel app in market, which is currently all air driven. So those are the interesting facts about Webjet, and that drives our strategy, which is on the next slide. Next slide, please. So our priorities for this upcoming year are threefold. The first priority that we have is continuing to retain our leadership position and stay #1 in air. And in order to maintain that air dominance, we'll continue to develop that Webjet platform that we have on the laptop and the desktop platform on mobile and iPad. We have an iPhone app, as I've mentioned previously, and we just launched our HTML5 site as well. we'll look to launch with hotels on both platforms soon. So we know we want to be everywhere a consumer wants to buy, and our data has indicated that over the next year, we'll probably receive over 25% of our searches coming in from a mobile platform. So to maintain that air dominance, we need to continue to focus on getting on these mobile platforms. So that's a #1 initiative for us in the next year. The second key strategic initiative for us is the launch of our hotels platform. As I indicated before, maybe one hotel a year might be a slight under-exaggeration, but we didn't sell much. So 6 months ago, we launched a new hotel platform doing what we think we do best, which is aggregating content. And in this case, we're aggregating the hotel content from 5 different suppliers in order to provide the most robust inventory available in the market. So we have over 100,000 hotels globally with year-round inventory. And that content is supplemented with user reviews from TripAdvisor. That is a key initiative for us to help balance out our portfolio and provide a more robust shopping experience for our customers. And the third thing that we are doing is global expansion. I've already mentioned to you that we are launching Mexico later this year. We launched Hong Kong and Singapore, and we're continuing to review new markets as the year progresses. Now, what's interesting about both the hotels and the global expansion is that as those businesses continue to gain traction, the underlying core business is demonstrating increased profit growth and the economies of scale. And that's currently providing us with sufficient headroom to fund those emerging businesses without diluting any shareholder return. I shared with you our half-year results. So effectively, getting air right and getting search right is allowing us to create new opportunities and new growth within our businesses with no shareholder dilution. So I can't be stating strongly enough that air search is an absolute priority for us. And that's why on the next slide, I'm going to show you why working with Travelport and the release of e-pricing into our business has had a dramatic effect for us and has supported us doing exactly that, getting air shopping right. So back in 2010, after 5 months of working with Travelport, we migrated from a previous version of their shopping platform onto e-pricing. Now, it took us 5 months to do that migration because we wanted to spend a lot of time with Travelport making sure we got it right. It was a pretty big risk for us because we were doing well before that, and we wanted to make sure that this new version of shopping wasn't going to knock us off track at all. But I'm pleased to say that those 5 months yielded a very excellent result. So some of the outcomes were as follows. The first thing we saw was a significantly greater carrier diversity. Excuse me. On the first thing that we saw is some carriers that were not showing up in previous searches now became available on the new shopping platform. So for us, some carriers like Jet Airways, Asiana, China Airlines, all really relevant carriers in the APAC region were able to be returned on the new shopping platform. That meant better fares returning with more options for our customers. Secondly, e-pricing were allowing us to provide more unique multi-carrier itineraries, and that gave our customers more choice with cheaper routings available, usually some indirect routings that previously were not presented. Now, for people in the U.S., I'm sure the concept of a 24-hour stopover is not something that you would relish, but for an Australian traveler getting to the other side of the world, being able to now surface a 24-hour stopover, let's say somewhere in Asia, that became a big selling point for us, and we've really been able to tap into a new market. On the old platform of shopping, we were unable to do that. On the new platform of shopping, we have the opportunity to show that, or not show that as the case may be, and really open up some choice for our customers. I guess the point about e-pricing and the variety of what it's able to present to us is, if our customers want it, we have the flexibility to display it. And if there are some crazy backpackers that think a 24-hour stopover in Bangkok and hanging out at the airport is fun, we have that flexibility now to show it. We've also seen a 50% reduction in shopping transactions. I think Mike mentioned in his presentation the burden on some of the airline systems with look-to-books. with all of the growing shopping entry points. Now, Look to Books is great for us, and it's the speed of our site because we've also been able to reduce the number of shopping transactions that we've needed to use to return the same and, in fact, increased levels of content on the site. It's also improved our relationship with some of the carriers who previously had felt that we were sending very large volumes of traffic their way for perhaps not the appropriate volume of bookings. So that was an excellent benefit of the change. A fourth benefit that we saw was the, and probably the biggest and most exciting one of all, was we actually just got some better prices. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see that e-pricing, when compared to the old shopping platform, e-pricing returned on 1% of the fares that we reviewed. 1% of the fares were higher. 43% of the fares, however, returned lower on the same city pairs than on our old shopping platform, and 57% of them matched. So it was an absolute excellent result for us. Better content, more content, less impact to our airline partners. Next slide, please. And the proof was in the pudding. Ultimately, we saw more international bookings during the period post the implementation of e-pricing, and we had increased revenues because of all of the additional carriers and content that we were selling. Next slide, please. So where's the future for us? We continue to work to deliver this search platform anytime, anywhere, any platform. I've mentioned the platforms that we're working on now, but we are continuing to evaluate what other applications that we should be integrated with and where else we can provide our search capabilities. We're also looking to continue to acquire content, and by that I mean actual acquisition of content, whether that be getting a new carrier as it comes on board, or whether that means working with Travelport to continue to enhance the e-pricing platform to expose new fares and new combinations of fares that meet our customers' needs. Voice is something that we're most definitely looking at. So to Mike's point about the semantic search being the precursor to that, we have definitely started a project to look to use voice search on our platform soon. And lastly, personalization. We've got data for every single customer who's bought with us, and yet to date, the shopping experience is very similar for most individuals when they come on the site. We have a very simple site. We have a very easy site. Now we'd like to make it a much more personal site. So that's Webjet's experience using e-pricing and search with Travelport. And I'm going to hand it back over to you now, Kevin. Open for any questions.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So last call really for questions. We've got quite a few in already, but if you're got quick fingers there, you can get onto the questions part and send in some questions as we go through. So everyone is joining. Jean is joining us now as well. Just quickly, Michael in Langley, you must have been quite pleased that the poll results said that accuracy was the most important thing, which kind of matched what you were saying in the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, accuracy, the feedback we get from our own customers and prospective customers out in the marketplace is actually one of the biggest frustrations and one of the biggest barriers to conversion in travel retail today is failure in the purchase path. We invest multiple millions of dollars every year in our caching platforms, in our availability platforms, and in our people who are looking at the sources of failure in our systems and working very, very hard with airlines and with our travel agency partners to eliminate and ultimately reduce those failures for the benefit of everybody. So to hear that the work we're doing makes sense to those that are on this webinar is very reassuring for us.
We've achieved anything this evening. That's a good one. So, audience question here then. So, Robert Cole, is forever sending us great questions when he listens into our webinars. So Robert Cole has actually sent in a couple, but this is the first one. He asks, this is directed at you, Michael, says, has Travelport calculated the number of search permutations driven by consumers searching for multiple destinations from multiple origins for multiple stays during durations across multiple months? So I'll read that again. So have you guys calculated the number of search permutations driven by consumers searching multiple destinations from multiple origins for multiple stay durations across multiple months? So basically, are you able to calculate, or are you calculating every single kind of permutation because they are clearly now exist, because that's what people are looking for when they are searching. It's that it goes to that agony thing, I suppose, to a certain extent.
Yeah, it does. The short answer is no. It's actually very difficult for us to do that, primarily because most of our online-based customers, which is where our volume comes from, are sessionless. They send us individual queries, and we send back an individual response. What we can do is identify trends in those parameters, and indeed, we have customers that we work with that build databases, that build caches on their side, so we understand the business processes that power that thirst for data. If I'm looking at actual numbers, it's very, very difficult for me to arrive at one, but I know that it is increasingly prevalent in the marketplace for our key customers and indeed our small and mid-sized customers to build content databases to satisfy that type of search in-house, if you like, on the client side. Having the ability to do that more efficiently with the community model that the GDS offers is something that we're aggressively focusing on this year to try and determine what the value is of all the data that appears in our systems and all the prices and itineraries we're calculating on a daily basis. On our peak day this year, in mid-January, we computed 1.2 billion itineraries in response to search queries. Sadly for us, we returned that to the customer, and then we forgot about it. There has to be huge amounts of value in storing, mining, serving up in various ways the content that was calculated as part of those 1.2 billion itineraries. I'm sure there's a lot of value in it for Travelport and a lot of value in it for our customers, even if it just saves customers having to spawn those multiple queries and drive down those volumes.
Kevin, I've got a question. This is Gene.
Go for it.
Shelley, I was struck by your piece of data on one of your later slides about the efficiency of searching for airfares on Webjet. Can you comment on how much of that is internal to Webjet in design and perhaps functionality of your system? How much of that is, and how much of that may be just general traveler weariness with running around the web and maybe becoming a bit tired about inefficient searching elsewhere? Do you have any point of view on that?
And which piece of data specifically, sorry, Gene, on the efficiency?
You said there'd been a 50% reduction.
50% reduction in the number of queries, apologies if I wasn't clear on that. The 50% reduction in the amount of queries, shopping queries that we had to send through, and that had more to do with the structure of how e-pricing works. So that meant we had to hit airline hosts less frequently. So using e-pricing, we were able to package up our requests and send them through to airlines more efficiently than we were doing previously, and could get back more data than on the old shopping platform. And that meant that the carriers, our look-to-books went down, and we were just more efficient in the way that we shopped. Previously, we may have had to send multiple requests to get the same kinds of combinations of data to package it up and present it out to the consumer. The new version of e-pricing, as it is evolving, allows us to send the request in a much more efficient way. Does that make sense?
It sure does. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so always a danger when I say please send your questions in, that we suddenly get a flurry of them, and I fear that we're not going to get through them all. But one of the things that we will do is that we do make a note of all of these questions, and we'll send these off to the panel after we've finished, and hopefully they can come back to you personally, or someone from Travelport or from Webjet will come back to you personally with an answer to your question. So anyway, this is for you, Shelley. It's a two-part question from two people. George Kremenliev, I hope I've pronounced your name right, George, asks very simply, and you may not be able to say this, who was your previous search provider for Webjet? That's the first part. Can you tell us that?
We have been with Travelport now since 2003. Prior to that, it was another GDS provider, but the switch in 2010 was from a previous Travelport platform.
Right, okay. And Paul Byrne asks, can Shelley talk a little bit about Webjet's use of inspiration as a search mechanism?
That's interesting. We don't spend a lot of time on inspiration. Depending on how you define inspiration, we don't spend a lot of time in that area per se. So we spend a bit of time on, let's call it price inspiration. So Mike showed you a shot, if you will, of a calendar with some pricing metrics around it. We're able to surface that because of the case that we keep a lot of data around pricing and deal finding. That's about the only inspiration that we drive from our site, because we don't view ourselves as content experts on destinations. So we've done nothing about integrating in any, beautiful pictures of Bali. We're not content specialists. So our inspiration that we deliver on the content is really all around deals, because we still view ourselves very much as a transactional site. So a little bit different than Mike's commentary about OTAs being more and more a point of inspiration. It's not an area that will go down. We want people to spend a lot of time investigating on the web, the wider web, with the experts who have destination-based content and whatnot, and then come to us when they know they want to get the broadest range of content and are ready to transact.
Okay, we're going to try and get through some of these final questions here. We may go over by a couple of minutes. We've got hundreds of you still on the line, so as long as we don't get a mass exodus on the hour, we'll keep going for just a couple of more minutes. We're obviously very conscious of people's time, especially those in Europe. So, Christopher Demicolo, I hope I've pronounced your name as right as well, Christopher. He asks, and this could be to either yourself, Michael, or Shelley, he says, why is it that e-pricing returns cheaper results? I think that was mentioned by one of you. Why is that?
Kevin, I'll try and answer that for a little bit. I mean, one of the items that we're proud of, if you like, as Travelport as part of flight search are the algorithms and the approach, the philosophy we take when we look at flight search. E-pricing is what we would term to be a fare-led search engine. When we're looking at a market, in one of Shelley's examples, Sydney to London, huge market, hundreds of carriers, hundreds of thousands of options, most of which, quite frankly, would be junk. They would result in higher prices, and no one would be interested in buying them. The strategy that we take to dissect that search space, understand what is compelling from a price perspective and what is not compelling, is to look at fare data. And fare data actually can give you a huge amount of insight into which carriers you should be targeting, which combinations of carriers are going to yield cheap results. And we can spend our energy chasing down what we believe to be the absolute lowest fare, irrespective of how many carriers need to participate in the itinerary, how many connections you need to take, or how long those layovers need to be. Those types of results are not suitable to everybody, and Shelley mentioned it in her presentation. There is a niche market that wants to see the absolute lowest fare, irrespective of how long it takes to travel or how ugly the itinerary is going to be. And e-pricing is flexible enough to provide you with those options or pare them down a little bit to make them more relevant if your market is more geared towards the corporate traveler. But in essence, it's those search algorithms that we've worked as Travelport for so long on that we're so proud of.
Okay, so we're going to just get a couple more questions in here now. I guess whenever it comes to flight search these days, and Mike alluded to it in his presentation, and I think this question is directed at you. This is from Richard Calder, and he asks Shelley, what is Shelley's view on Google Flights as a supplier direct model? And obviously, admittedly, they've started working with, I believe it's Orbitz is one of the OTAs that's included. But just as a general view of a beast like Google coming onto the scene and only going direct to airlines, what's kind of your Webjet's point of view on that?
You would never underestimate the strength and the intelligence of an organization and the potential threat of an organization like Google. But today, in the near term, we are not investing too much energy being concerned about their entry into the markets that we operate. They're very complicated markets. If you look at where they're at today in the U.S., they only have, less than 1% traction, I think. They don't even have Southwest. So when you look at how complicated the markets are that we're in today, we don't view it as an immediate threat to our business. Now, that's not to say that we're not working very closely with Travelport to continue to challenge them to present to us the things like the speed that we all find so attractive on the Google site, and continuing to work with Travelport to make sure that we have all the content, which is what we think is the differentiator for us. So it's certainly there, and we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of those first poll questions, which was around what's the most important part, and speed came in surprisingly low, which is, as I said at the time, that's one of the elements that Google's been talking up all the time, was the speed and the speed of the results and as they're being returned to consumers. So interesting kind of conflict, if for anything else. So last question, and I guess this is primarily to you, Mike. I mean, because you did talk a little bit about voice search. Jonathan Alford here says, Travel is a great candidate for voice search in part due to limited vocabulary requirements, etc. He says, how are you finding the accuracy at this point, particularly in terms of things like date translation, in any examples or testing that you've seen? He says, for example, speaking January 5th to 9th would often translate as January the 5th, 29. So, there's slight quirks. I mean, obviously, people have been experiencing strange things with Siri, for example. If you say beach into Siri, it often comes out as a word which is not particularly nice. So I'm just wondering what kind of experience that you may have seen, and how you suspect we may get over that as an industry, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I would echo the sentiment you just mentioned, Kevin. With a lot of these emerging technologies, if you want to confuse, if you want to baffle and break, it's very easy to do so. What I will say is we've been evaluating this periodically for quite some time, and when we first started looking, voice was just so far off in travel that it made absolutely no sense to really start to focus heavily on it. With the work that we've been doing with Everture that looks at text and the sophistication they have to decipher text and create an accurate and adequate travel request, overlaying voice on that with some of the tools that we have coming out in the marketplace from Google and Microsoft are actually quite sophisticated. Accent recognition, regional language, and potentially working with them to refine the semantics around the terms used in travel isn't something that I can see being a long way off. Do I think that there's a voice recognition search that's going to satisfy everybody, even in the English language? No, not yet. But I think it's something that's definitely going to be prevalent in the very future. And with the increased proliferation of smartphone devices and various mobile applications, it's the natural step to simplifying the user experience of search.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Mike. And also, obviously, thank you to Shelley. Great presentations, brilliant discussion. We didn't get through half of the questions that came in, but we're obviously conscious of everyone's time. So we have made a note of every single one of these questions, and we'll try to get those some answers back to you, either from the folk at Travelport or from Shelley or people at Webjet, if there's anything in particular. So we will try and go those back to you as soon as we can. So another reminder, we have been recording the entire thing. We will be posting that on tnews.com, like I said, within the next 24 hours. Someone asked earlier about if the slides were available. Yes, the slides will be on the same post underneath the video, as I said, within 24 hours. So any questions that you have are either to me, I can direct them obviously to the panel here. I strongly urge you to go and play around with Webjet, see what they're doing with how e-pricing kind of plays out from a front-end perspective. And obviously, please visit travelport.com, and there's got all of their product information, including the e-pricing stuff, is there on travelport.com. So last of all, from me, thank you very much, especially those in Europe that have stayed up so late. Good morning, those in Asia Pacific, and enjoy the rest of your day, those that are over in North America, which did seem to be the majority of you. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much again to Travelport for supporting yet another TNews webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you very much for listening, and we will see or speak to you all incredibly soon. Thanks ever so much again. Bye-bye.